UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber. UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber.
Tomex. Fellam sa visibija awama kar dina 3ක් දක්වා ටොයිලට් එක ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ව තමයි. Tomex.
Tonight, will he or won't he? Despite the finance minister announcing an IMF move yesterday, the central bank governor says it's no big deal. The devil's in the details. International travel industry experts reveal Sri Lanka's major competitive advantage.
The very sheer fact that Sri Lanka is open for visitors is a huge thing to underline, because all these huge markets, if you like, but they have been closed and they're still closed.
Time to go. State Minister resigns after son's embroilment in med student fracas. In the dark. The Sri Lanka Navy nabs another foreign vessel, but the drugs end up overboard. All that and much more coming up on First at 9 this Thursday, the 3rd of February 2022.
සියක් දක්වා ඉස්සොරින් නැති 100% සුසිනිඳු කෙස් කලමක් ලබා දෙයි. Dove Anti-Dandruff.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanai. Now, Sri Lanka is expecting a further $1 billion in assistance from India in the coming weeks as part of Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa's talks with the regional superpower. The minister says that India wanted to keep the sum away from news, but the cat was somehow let out of the bag. Addressing a media briefing last evening, the finance minister also ended months of speculation, confirming that the government has in fact approached the International Monetary Fund, but only to get their expertise. He's expecting IMF representatives in the island over the coming days.
Minister of Finance Basil Rajapaksa addressed a media briefing last evening and responded to various questions which were directed his way by members of the media. In response to one of them, the finance minister explained his request for assistance from India.
ගිල්ලා මම කතා කරා මුදල් අමාත්‍යතුමියත් විදේශ අමාත්‍යවරයාත් මේ කාරණා තුනක් කිව්වා අපිට ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ආහාර ද්‍රව්‍ය ගන්න බෙහෙත් ගන්න අවශ්‍යයි අපිට ඉන්ධන ගන්න අවශ්‍යයි මේ තුන සඳහා අවශ්‍ය මූල්‍ය පහසුකම් දෙන්න කියලා අපි ඒ අතරම අපේ රටට අවශ්‍ය ආකාරයට මේ ට්‍රේඩ් බැලන්ස් එක තියෙන ප්‍රධාන රටවල් දෙක තමයි ඉන්දියාව සහ චීනය. ඒ රටවල් දෙකෙන්ම අපි ඉල්ලීමක් කරලා තියෙනවා අපිට යම්කිසි ගෙවීම සඳහා සහන අවස්ථාවක් දෙන්න කියලා. ඒකට බොහොම ධනාත්මකව අපිට උත්තර දුන්නා. ඉතින් හැමදාම මේ රටවල් අපිට උදව් කරපු රටවල් මේ වෙලාවේ ඒ උදව්ව ක්‍රමයෙන් කොටස් වශයෙන් අපිට ලැබෙනවා. මම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා පෙබරවාරි මාසේ දෙවන සතියේ පමණ තවත් මං ඉල්ලපු ඉතිරි ප්‍රමාණයත් ලබා ගැනීම සඳහා ගිවිසුම් ගත වෙන්න. උනේ එකම ඉල්ලීම කරේ මේක අවසන් වෙනකම් ගාන විතරක් කියන්න එපා කියලා. දැන් ඉතින් ගාන එල්ලි දරව් වෙච්ච නිසා තව අපිට අවශ්‍යයි අපේ අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ආහාර ද්‍රව්‍ය බෙහෙත් සහ අනෙකුත් දේවල් අපේ අමුද්‍රව්‍ය වගේ ඒවා ගන්න තව ඇමරිකන් ඩොලර් බිලියනයක් පමණ ඒ කියන්නේ 502ක් ඒ බිලියනයත් මං හිතන්නේ අපිට පෙබරවාරි මාසේ අවසන් වෙන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා මාර්තු මාසේ ආරම්භය වෙනකොට අපිට ලැබෙයි කියලා අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
The finance minister also revealed the government's expected expenditure this year.
පළවෙනියෙන්ම ගෙවන්න තියෙන්නේ ණය සහ ඒවායේ සේවා ගාස්. ඒක ගෙවන්න තියෙනවා ඇමරිකන් ඩොලර් බිලියන 6.9ක්. සමහරව නම් ගෙවන්න එපයි කියන කට්ටියකුත් ඉන්නවා. හැබැයි අපි ඒක අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම ගෙවනවා. ඊළඟට අපේ අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ද්‍රව්‍ය ඉන්ධන ගේන්න තියෙනවා. කර්මාන්ත සඳහා අවශ්‍ය අමුද්‍රව්‍ය ගේන්න තියෙනවා. බෙහෙත් ගේන්න තියෙනවා. මේ හතරත් ඇතුළුව තව අත්‍යවශ්‍ය භාණ්ඩ කීපයක් අපි ගෙන්නන්න ඕන. මේ සියල්ලම එකතු කරාම 2022 වර්ෂයට ඇමරිකන් ඩොලර් බිලියන 30ක් පමණ අපිට අවශ්‍යයි. අපි සැලසුම් කරලා තියෙනවා ඩොලර් බිලියන 31ක් පමණ ලබා ගන්න. ඉතින් විවිධ ක්‍රම තියෙනවා. අපේ ගතානුගතික ක්‍රමවේදක් තියෙනවා. අලුත් ක්‍රමවේදක් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් අපි හිතනවා අපේ කඩාවැටිච්ච ශේෂ්ත්‍රත් නැවත නැකිටී කියලා.
There had been calls from various factions, including the opposition, for the government to seek IMF assistance in the face of the present forex troubles. During Tuesday's cabinet media briefing, Cabinet co-spokesperson Dr. Ramesh Patirana noted that there hadn't been talks during cabinet meetings to approach the IMF. However, on the prospect, the finance minister had this to say.
නිල වශයෙන් අපි මේව කරලා නැහැ. නමුත් අපි ලිඛිතව ඉල්ලලා තියෙනවා උන්ගේ සහයෝගය අපිට දෙන්න කියලා විශේෂඥ දැනුම. මොකද IMF එක තමයි මෙවැනි අර්බුදකාරී රටවල් වලට උපදෙස් දෙන්න දැනට ජාත්‍යන්තර පිටරලා තියෙන ආයතනය. ඉතින් අපි ඉල්ලුවා ඒක සඳහා මුදල් අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා. ඒ මුදල් ටික ජපාන් රජයෙන් දෙන්න එකඟ වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ දෙකම අපිට තහවුරු කරලා IMF එකේ වෙලා තියෙනවා. මං හිතන්නේ හෙට අනිද්දා උන් ඇවිල්ලා මේ රටේ අපි නොදන්න දේවල් ගැන අපිට උපදෙස් දෙවි. ඉතින් උපදෙස් බාර ගන්නවද නැද්ද කියන එක මට තනියෙන් කරන්න පුළුවන් කමක් නැහැ.
Now, following yesterday's remarks by Finance Minister about Sri Lanka seeking IMF expertise, Governor of the Central Bank, Ajit Nimad Cabral, moved to give further clarification today. Taking to Twitter, the central bank governor said that the finance minister's comment about informing the IMF to provide expertise on the country's economic situation is about a routine technical assistance program on macro-fiscal capacity building for Finance Ministry's new macro-fiscal unit and nothing else. Now, moving on with other stories, Sri Lanka's tourism reopening last January seems to be paying off, according to the editor of the UK travel magazine Wanderlust, George Kapouros, as it remains among the very few countries in the region to be welcoming UK travellers. Kapouros added that Sri Lanka can look forward to a pleasant surprise this year in terms of tourism arrivals, as more and more UK travellers take advantage of the country's relaxed travel rules. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority chairperson Kimali Fernando says that using its quality over quantity strategy, this year's target is expected to be around 1.1 million tourist arrivals.
Reopening Sri Lanka for tourism back in January last year, when the island was still reeling from the effects of a surprise pandemic, came as a bit of a shock. Critics of the move were confident that it was not the right time to be welcoming back tourists, especially when the global vaccination program was relatively in its infancy. However, with hotel operators and millions of Sri Lankans dependent on tourist dollars for survival, it was a move that in hindsight was done at the right time. Despite having begun its reopening with a novel travel bubble concept, right now the doors have been thrown wide open. However, with the country's tourist arrivals in peak season last year just a fraction of its past years, getting the message out there on what tourists can expect when travelling to Sri Lanka is vital. That's what a webinar organised by the Council for Business with Britain, titled Sri Lanka, Much More for Visitors to Enjoy, aimed to do yesterday. It featured foreign travel experts, journalists and Sri Lanka's industry bigwigs as well.
Sri Lanka is definitely open for business. So if you're fully vaccinated, frankly, it's almost like travel in 2019. All you need to do is have a PCR test done 72 hours before. Get your mandatory COVID insurance, which is $12. So if you're fully vaccinated, you can travel all over Sri Lanka. Absolutely no restrictions at all. So if you're partly vaccinated and you haven't waited the 14 days since the vaccination, then you'll have to stay the 14 days either in Sri Lanka or wherever you are before you come to be fully vaccinated. But if you don't want to be vaccinated for whatever reason, so you're still welcome to Sri Lanka. But for the first few days, for 7 to 10 days, you will have to stay in a safe and secure hotel. But you can use all the facilities in the hotel. So it's not quarantine.
With that, the SLTDA chairperson also highlighted Sri Lanka's revamped tourism strategy that will look to focus on a more quality rather than quantity basis.
2018 was the best year with 2.3 million arrivals. That's roughly 200,000 a month. So that's what we are planning and we will target is 100,000 a month. That's 50% of the best year. So roughly we are planning to have arrivals of about 1.1 million tourists. We never went for mass scale tourism and we don't want to go for mass scale tourism either. Our target is in 4 to 5 years time to have 7 million tourists maximum because our island is quite small. We like to keep it sustainable as well.
Further, editor-in-chief of the UK's premier travel magazine Wanderlust, George Kapouros, who just completed a tour of Sri Lanka, shared his experience in the island. He added that the fact that Sri Lanka remains open to tourists at all gives it a major competitive advantage over its regional competitors.
It's a pretty straightforward process. It took me actually 15 minutes from the moment we deplaned all the way through to when I was in the car on the way to Gulf. And you know, that beautiful, warm Sri Lankan smiles everywhere. You tend to forget that this isn't the welcome you get in many airports around the world. One point where I would like to stay, because I don't have much more to add in terms of the entry from Maldives, is just the very sheer fact that Sri Lanka is open for visitors is a huge thing to underline, because all these huge markets, if you like, but they have been closed and they're still closed. And even Thailand that reopened will have to deal with a massive PR problem, because just as it opened, it like in panic closed for what was the peak period of December to January, leaving a lot of people with bookings unable to get to their destinations. So Sri Lanka has a very significant competitive advantage at the moment. I think, it is important to say that right now for 2022, we're not anticipating a reopening of some of the core markets, if you like, for the UK travelers when it comes to Asia. Sri Lanka uniquely is offering visitors from the UK right now the Asian, the Southeast Asian experience, and is open and welcoming people. So that is something the industry really needs to go out and shout about. It's not just about ease of access. It's about the possibility of accessing the island. So I think you're going to be very positively surprised with how well people respond to the fact that you are open this year.
Meanwhile, despite Sri Lanka's tourism authorities having initially come under quite a bit of flack for their decision to discontinue their travel bubble concept, travel writer and tour organizer Janet Newenham says that this is exactly what will bring in UK tourists to the island in droves.
They definitely don't want any restrictions. I don't anyway. They're happy to be fully vaccinated. They're happy to have their booster. But once they've done that, I think they feel like they've done their part and that they should be allowed to travel freely as much as possible. So I've just started doing group trips recently, and the demand is like nothing you could ever imagine. I am in shock. Like every single one of my followers wants to go somewhere this year. They all want to go to the sun or go on safari. I think out of all the trips I advertised, Sri Lanka was the one that was most in demand. Sri Lanka has so much diversity, and it's for them, it's that whole package. They haven't traveled for 2 years, and suddenly they can go to this one island where there's amazing beaches and tea plantations and culture and temples and elephants all in one little package.
With that, hotel operators seem to be smiling more these days as well. Despite the initial reservations, they seem to be happy with some new changes in traveller behaviour after the pandemic.
So we're seeing a shift in the trend that, the post-COVID travellers are staying a little longer in hotels, and they are spending a bit more than the average spend they spent prior to COVID. So all in all, we see good momentum building up, and definitely seeing that it's on the path for recovery right now.
Meanwhile, a Latvian rower who has begun his quest to become the first person to row across the globe reached safe harbour in Gaul today, where he was given a surprise welcome by local authorities. Carlis Bradelis, who set off from Namibia in 2016 after having had some delay due to the pandemic, recommenced his journey from the island of Langkawi a month ago.
Latvian adventurer Carlis Bradelis, who set off on a circumnavigation of the globe in 2016 from Namibia in a man-powered boat, reached the port of Gaul this morning. Having taken many breaks in between since then, he finally recommenced his effort after a pandemic-induced break from Malaysia earlier this year. He seeks to become the first person to complete a circumnavigation of the globe in his unique craft. He was welcomed at the Gaul port by Gaul district parliamentarian Sampath Adukorala and Export Development Board chairman Suresh Dimel.
With this same boat, I restarted the journey from Kuala Perlis, Malaysia, rowed to Langkawi Island of Malaysia, and then 1 month ago take my things and left the pier from Langkawi. And actually for the ocean rowing, that's very fast. 1 month from Malaysia to here is quite quick. So I am very satisfied that it turned out that I can stop in Sri Lanka, because on the way it looked like at some point it looked very difficult, because the wind pushed me from north to south, and I was all the time, my friends were following and also were really curious whether I will be able to make it to Sri Lanka. And yeah, luckily I'm here. It was quite challenging, but at the same time very enjoyable, because that's what I like to do. This is what I choose to do. Nobody pays me for this, but this is my life and I enjoy that. So we are supporting a few charities along the way. Pacific Ocean was dedicated to orphans in Latvia, and this one is dedicated to build the first hospice care unit in Latvia. So raising funds for the charity too.
Minister of Finance Basil Rajpaksa inaugurated the island-wide development project titled AdaDerana today, which aims to promote and develop Sri Lanka's production economy. With 85 billion rupees allocated for the project, it will be worked off across all 14,021 Gram Niladhari divisions and 336 divisional secretariats in the country.
The development project titled AdaDerana was launched today under the patronage of Minister of Finance Basil Rajpaksa, through which 100,000 projects will be carried out across the island at village level. The development project aims to uplift Sri Lanka's production economy and strengthen the livelihoods of all citizens.
මේක දිවයිනේ දිස්ත්‍රික්ක 25ම ආවරණය වෙමින් ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම් කොට්ටාස 336ත් ග්‍රාම නිලධාරී කොට්ටාස 14021ත් ඇතුළත් වන සංවර්ධන වැඩසටහන් හා ව්‍යාපෘති ආරම්භ කිරීම බිලියන 85ක් මේ සඳහා වෙන් කළා තියෙනවා.
මේ වැඩසටහන ආරම්භ වුණේ අතිගරු ජනාධිපති ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ මැතිතුමා ගම සමග පිළිසඳරක් කියන වැඩසටහන යටතේ එතුමා මේ වැඩපිළිවෙල දිගට ගෙන යන්න කියලා අපිට උපදෙස් ලබා දුන්නා. ඒ අනුව අයවැය ලේඛනයෙන් අපිට හැකියාව ලැබුණා මේ රටේ සියලුම ග්‍රාම සේවක වසම් 14021යි රාජ්‍ය පරිපාලන අමාත්‍යාංශය කියන විදිහට ග්‍රාමීය මට්ටමේ නිලධාරීනුත් ප්‍රජා නායකයනුත් මහජන නියෝජිතයනුත් මේ කොට්ටාස සියල්ලම එකතු වෙලා කරන මේ වැඩසටහන අපි අද සාර්ථකව ආරම්භ කරා. අපි මේක අභියෝගයක් මේක මාස 12ක් ඇතුළත අපි අවසන් කිරීමයි අපේ බලාපොරොත්තුව. ඒ වගේම ජාතික ඉලක්ක සපුරාලීම සඳහා ගැළපෙන විදියට ඒ ග්‍රාමීය යෝජනා ජනතාවගේ යෝජනා ගලපමින් මේ කටයුත්ත කරා. අපි ඊටාම අමාරු අවස්ථාවක මම හිතන්නේ ඒ අමාරු අවස්ථාව රටේ ජනතාවට දැනෙනා වගේම වැඩියෙන්ම දැනෙන තැන තමයි මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශය කිලෝමීටර් ලක්ෂයක වැඩ අපි පාරවල් සකස් කිරීම කරා. ජනාධිපතිතුමා කාලය තුල ඒ වගේම එතුමා බලයට පත් වෙච්ච හැටියට අඩු ආදායම්ලාභී පුද්ගලයන් ලක්ෂයකට රැකියා දීමත් ඒ වගේම ඊට බාහිරව උපාධාරීන් 53000කට අධික පිරිසක් පුහුණු කරලා ස්ථීර රැකියා බවට පත් කරා. ඒ වගේ අපි මේ වැඩපිළිවෙල යටතේ එවැනිම මුළු රටටම වැළඳගත් වැඩපිළිවෙලක් යටතේ අපි කටයුතු කරන්නේ.
In line with the national launch of the project, various projects simultaneously got underway at grassroots level across the island at an auspicious time under the direction of the Ministry of Finance.
We will see you shortly on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, the European Commission yesterday presented Sri Lanka's cinnamon industry with a major boost by giving Ceylon cinnamon the geographical indication or GI status. With the new status, Ceylon cinnamon will now finally be set apart from lower quality substitutes and give it a competitive advantage in terms of market differentiation, product turnover and a premium price.
Marking a historical moment for the country's spice industry, Sri Lanka received its first ever geographical indication certification when the European Union Commission granted the product the status yesterday. The outcome was a result of a painstaking decade-long arduous endeavour led by the Sri Lanka Export Development under the Ministry of Trade with the support of numerous public and private stakeholders. The new GI status will now differentiate Ceylon cinnamon in the EU market from its substitutes of lower quality and will offer it a competitive advantage in terms of market differentiation, product turnover, and most importantly, a love for a premium price. This is expected to also help almost 30,000 producers in Sri Lanka achieve higher income and increase employment opportunities. Cinnamon exports as of December 2021 showed strong performance, recording a year-on-year increase of 10.67%.
Immunologists at the Medical Research Institute explained today that people shouldn't shrug away the idea of getting the vaccine simply because Omicron is able to evade vaccine immunity. Expanding on the matter, immunologist Dr. Nihan Rajiv De Silva said that the vaccine triggers multiple sections of the body's immune system, which in turn helps prevent patients from suffering from severe complications.
Studies conducted in Sri Lanka have led to the hypothesis that Omicron is the dominant variant in the island. At the heels of these studies came the noticed increase in new daily COVID cases. and over the last 4 days, the number had been above 1,000 and it's on the up. Unlike the Delta variant, the Omicron variant poses a higher threat to the society, as multiple studies show that it is more capable of evading vaccine and natural immunity. This may be the reason for there being a visible lack of enthusiasm in obtaining the booster dose. However, a simple explanation of the workings of the immune system makes a case for vaccination, especially the booster.
The immune system has different arms. One is what are called antibodies, and the second are T cells. Now, what antibodies do is when a virus comes into the body, it blocks the virus from getting into cells. The virus will cause problems if it gets into cells, and then you get the clinical features like colds and coughs and so on. So that is blocked by antibodies. But when the virus has entered the cell, antibodies can't go inside the cell. So there is what is called the T cell. It destroys virus-infected cells, and when it destroys virus-infected cells, the virus also dies. Because of the difference in the two viruses, the antibodies that recognize Delta do not recognize Omicron, or the recognition is reduced. So that is why a person who has got Delta in the past can get Omicron today. But the T cells, the antigens or the part of the virus that is recognized by T cells is generally constant. Even if the virus gets into the cells because of the inefficiency or ineffectiveness of the antibody, there are T cells that will destroy that infected cell. So that is why a person who has got Delta in the past or who has been vaccinated, even if he or she gets the infection, it will be mild. He will not end up in hospital, he will not need oxygen, and he will not die. So that is one of the important things why you should take the vaccine.
Meanwhile, Dr. Rajiv De Silva also explained as to why the waiting period to get the booster dose was reduced to 1 month from 6 months after the second dose administration.
When we took the decision, it was during the Delta wave, and the vaccine worked quite well against the Delta virus. And when the second dose was given, up to 6 months, or in fact even beyond 6 months, the person was protected. But now the situation has changed. As I told you, the mutations in Omicron show that particularly the antibodies produced wane with time after the second dose, and it is not effective in preventing infection. So that is why we have said 1 month after an infection, you give the third dose.
State Minister Arundhika Fernando announced today that he intends to resign from his portfolio until investigations pertaining to his son's involvement in an attack on a group of medical students conclude.
Earlier today, State Minister of Coconut, Kithul and Palmyra Cultivation Promotion and related industrial product manufacturing and export diversification, Arundhika Fernando announced that he will resign from his state ministerial portfolio. It came after his son surrendered to the police last night following his involvement in an incident where some students of the medical faculty in Ragama were attacked. State Minister Fernando said that he would resign from his portfolio if he was found to be involved with the incident. However, he said today that he will resign from his post until all necessary investigations in this regard have concluded. Yesterday, a group of 10 to 15 people had forcefully entered the men's hostel of the Kalani University's Faculty of Medicine in Ragam at around 3 a.m. and attacked several students. As per reports, 4 students who sustained injuries were admitted to the Colombo North Teaching Hospital in Ragama. A total of 7 suspects involved in the incident are currently under arrest on charges of assault, causing injuries, forceful entry, unlawful assembly, and misuse of a vehicle belonging to a state institution. The accused, including the state minister's son, have been remanded until the 7th of February after being produced at the Vattala Magistrates Court.
The Navy has foiled yet another attempt to smuggle drugs into the country. However, this time the suspects have successfully discarded bulk of the evidence. During an operation in the international waters, the Navy has intercepted a foreign fishing vessel which was gearing to transfer a haul of heroin to a Sri Lankan vessel.
The Sri Lankan Navy's advanced offshore patrol vessel, Sayurala, had launched a 2 weeks-long surveillance operation in international waters. It was based on a joint intelligence operation conducted by the Navy, the police and intelligence agencies. During the operation, a foreign multi-day fishing vessel which had been preparing to offload a haul of heroin to a Sri Lankan fishing vessel 2002 kilometers off Dondra had come to the notice of the Navy. Afterwards, a special naval team had been dispatched to inspect the foreign vessel. As the team was nearing the vessel, its crew had dispatched 8 sacks into the sea. After the naval personnel boarded the vessel in question, they found about 250 grams of heroin and a satellite phone. It was later revealed that the sacks thrown overboard had contained around 200 kilograms of heroin. They also found footage of heroin being transported from a mobile phone of one of the suspects. Afterwards, the Navy arrested all 9 crew on board the vessel. Though the Navy deployed a special team to search the sacks thrown overboard by the suspects, nothing had been found, owing to the roughness and the depth of around 3.8 kilometers in the area. The suspects were brought to the Colombo port today, and the Navy media spokesperson, Captain Indigo de Silva, told AdaDerana English News that 2 members of the crew spoke English and that they suspect the crew are Iranian nationals. The Navy and the Police Narcotics Bureau are conducting further investigations.
Welcome back to First at 9. Now, Sri Lankan shares rebounded today after 2 straight sessions of losses, helped by gains in industrial and financial stocks. At the close of trade, the CSE All Share Price Index was 1.42% higher at 12,762.60 points, but lost 0.78% for the week. The S&P SL20 also posted a gain of 2.67% today to close at 4,333 points. Now, with that, here's a brief report on today's market performance.
Today, we saw market gaining the momentum and recovering back to the green territory after 2 consecutive days of being in the red zone, while diversified financial sector counters and transportation sector counters were the main contributors to move the index up during the day. While talking about the index continued taking downtrend in the beginning but managed to recover and traded positively afterwards as investors regained their confidence back regardless of the ongoing macroeconomic concerns. The week has been a rollercoaster ride for the market but managed to close the week in the green territory while closing the day at 12,763, gaining 179 points. However, despite the bullish session, the turnover recorded lower compared to the past few days as activities were into the lower scale and number of trades has declined to nearly 52,000 compared to yesterday, mainly due to the cautious sentiment by a lot of investors.
Meanwhile, in the currency market, the rupee remained unchanged at 202.99 cents against the US dollar. Now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee fared against other major currencies during the day. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.